Good evening. Welcome to this week's program. Like I promised last week, tonight we are going to look at some of the key decisions that were made by the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe when the central bank unveiled its mid-term monetary policy statement last week. And we are also going to take this opportunity to look back at some of the decisions that were made by the Minister of Finance. In fact, he stayed the course during the presentation of his mid-term budget statement. I'm Catherine Munyuki. And tonight on the program, to discuss the MPS and the mid-term budget statement, is renowned economist, Dr. Prosper Chitambara. Dr. Chitambara, welcome again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Sure.
Yes.
Looking both at the mid-term budget statement and the mid-term monetary policy statement, you can see that Treasury and Central Bank are working closely, and they're complementing each other.
Yeah.
I'll start with the RBZ, the monetary policy statement. It's more of the same. That's the They actually maintained and stayed the course.
Yeah.
In your view, could there have been more tweaks to it?
I think in my view, given where we are, given the short-term stability that we are witnessing in the market, in the macroeconomy, I think they were right to maintain things in terms of, say, even the bank policy rate, in terms of the other monetary policy instruments, where they are. I think this is not the best time to be doing major changes in terms of the course or the direction of the monetary policy, but also even in terms of the fiscal policy. So I fully support, I think, what both the central bank and the Ministry of Finance have done in terms of maintaining things the way they are. Then, of course, if there are changes to be made, we anticipate that in the case of the monetary policy, to be done probably next year when the governor presents the 2026 monetary policy statement. And then in terms of the fiscal policy, the Minister of Finance will be presenting the 2026 national budget again in November. So I think that will be an opportunity to come up with probably major changes, say, in terms of taxation. We know already a lot is happening in terms of doing business reforms, which I hope will also include the very contentious issue of taxation. The whole taxation regime in Zimbabwe has been very problematic for economic agents, the private sector, but also even for households. So, but that's an area that the government has indicated that they are working on as a way of trying to ease the doing business, but also reduce the cost of doing business and ultimately enhance overall competitiveness within our economy. So if I were the central bank governor, I think I would have probably maintained things the way they are and try to sustain the gains that have been made so far. So there are steady gains that are being made. So I think we need to guard very jealously those gains and build on those gains so as to ensure we attain more longer-term stability, which is critical in terms of macroeconomic sustainability and ultimately sustainable development in Zimbabwe.
Sure.
Yeah.
People, they've actually looked at one of the key things that came out of the MPS and said the usage of ZiG has surged to 40% in over a year, which is encouraging. But others have said no, because it is our currency.
Yeah.
We've got to see probably hovering above 70% its usage. What more can the governor do between now and February next year when he presents his monetary policy statement to make sure that we can increase the usage of ZiG in the economy from 40% probably to about what people are clamoring for, 70-75%? And is it attainable?
My view is that I think we need to proceed very cautiously. I think, yes, the 40%, that's a big improvement. But I think that really uptake of ZiG is dependent on our macroeconomic performance, especially with respect to inflation. Because I'm in favor of a market determined increase in ZiG usage and not necessarily a government decreed increase in ZiG usage. So the government must make it, must create or sustain the right kind of incentives through long-term stability, which will result in restoration of confidence by economic agents in the ZiG as a means of exchange. Yeah, but of course, government, I think with time, what they need to do is to come up with clear benchmarks in terms of, say, some of the services and the products that are still exclusively being sold in USD. But I think that's going to take a bit of time. I think those are probably the kind of clear signals that a lot of economic agents are probably expecting to see. But I think that's going to take a bit of time, in my view. So I think from where I stand as an economic observer, I think a cautious approach is good. So at least we don't rock the boat too much and in the process probably undo some of the gains that we've made. Mm-hmm. Because ultimately, de-dollarization must be market-led based on attainment of benchmarks around issues of stability, but also even issues of trust and confidence, which is also dependent on stability. So ultimately, trust and confidence is a function of a low and stable inflationary environment. So far, like I said earlier on, we have seen short-term stability, but what we need now to attain or to aim for is long-term stability. In other words, our annual inflation numbers are still on the very high side. Of course, the central bank is arguing that it's because of base effects following the devaluation or the depreciation of the ZiG in September. but annual inflation rate is a key indicator of long-term stability. So at the moment, as a scholar, I can argue that yes, we've attained short-term macroeconomic stability as evidenced by the low monthly inflation numbers, but we are still to attain long-term stability as evidenced by the high annual inflation numbers. So ideally, we did some analysis a few years back, and we found that for Zimbabwe, our optimal annual inflation rate is a figure of around 8%, 9%.
Okay.
In fact, between 7% and 9%.
Sure.
So we need to attain that before we can talk about sustainable de-dollarization, in my view.
Sure. Please join us in the second segment as we discuss the latest monetary policy statement, and of course, just going back to a few issues that were contained in the mid-term budget statement, which was released by the Minister of Finance at the end of last month. Welcome back. We continue with this week's program. If you're just joining us, we're in the middle of this week's discussion where we are joined by a renowned economist, Dr. Prosper Chitambara, and he's just giving us his views on the latest monetary policy statement, which was released last week by the Governor of the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, Dr. John Mushairan, as well as going back to some of the few issues that came out of the mid-term budget statement by the Minister of Finance, Professor Mthuli Ncube, who actually said at last week's Daily News post-mid-term budget breakfast forum that he did not want to stray off the course, so he stayed the course. Dr. Chitambara.
Yes.
Your colleagues, some economists, have said they find it to be a bit unfair that the central bank can actually maintain the same bank rates, 35% in USD, 35% in ZiG. I'm not an economist, but any rationale behind that?
No. You're actually right, Guthrie, because what it then now means is that effectively, in ZiG terms, our real interest rates are actually negative. Because we're saying that our annual inflation rate is around 92%. The bank policy rate is 35%. So it means we have negative, because the real interest rate, that's just the nominal interest rate minus the inflation, the annual inflation rate. So that creates problems, definitely. So I agree with those sentiments. Probably need to have a separate benchmark or reference rate for the ZIG, but also for the USD. Because ideally you don't want to have negative real interest rates. So but for in terms of the USD, the real interest rates are actually positive, which is good, which is the ideal situation. So when interest rates are negative in real terms, it means there's no incentive for banks to lend money. That means they are lending money at a loss.
Yeah.
So it creates problems.
Yeah. So
yes.
The other realization is that
you
have the bank rates at 35%, and they've been maintained at 35% for both currencies, the USD and the ZIG. Then most of the banks' loan books are dominated by USD loans.
Which explains the point, really.
Yeah.
That because of the negative real interest rates, there's no incentive to be lending in ZIG.
But what do you do then to the confidence that we must build when we don't seem to be also promoting lending in ZIG?
I think that again, that's a problem, definitely, because it means the financial sector is largely even more dollarized probably than the rest of the other sectors. So I'm hoping that as we probably begin to see the annual inflation rate in ZIG coming down, I think that will also probably improve that situation and the uptake or the increase in ZIG-denominated loans.
Which brings
but the challenge also is that if you are borrowing money in ZIG, probably it's largely for consumption, probably in my view. But I'm not sure if there are many people that are borrowing money in ZIG for productive purposes. I think most of the loans probably in ZIG are probably for maybe either to pay your tax obligations or probably largely for consumption, not necessarily for production.
Doesn't then present a conundrum for both business and the central bank? Because we are now saying that by December 2030, we would be looking forward to the expiration of the multi-currency use. Effectively, we are saying that we are going to de-dollarize
by 2030.
By 2030. We should have de-dollarized by 2030.
It can happen sooner or probably by that time.
You know? And we have the loans dominated
in USD.
And also we have a short lag room between clearing that those loans within the next 5 years and also trying to say, okay, we can now all switch to de-dollarization. So how is it likely to pan out? Because there's a bit of a fog there.
It's a fog, I think there are lots of uncertainties. And like what the bankers are saying that all the loans, the USD-denominated loans are not going beyond 2030 because of that anticipation that by 2030 the economy would have de-dollarized. But maybe that the Minister of Finance is mindful of that issue, that conundrum, and even in terms of our de-dollarization roadmap, I think it will definitely take into account those challenges that could arise by any, maybe in quotes, premature or early or premature de-dollarization agenda. So talking to Ministry of Finance officials and even the central bank. Of course, the central bank is even more bullish. They are even arguing that probably de-dollarization could actually happen even sooner than 2030. But obviously, those sentiments could actually unnerve the markets. I think if we agree that 2030, probably let's stick to that and try to make sure that the conditions on the ground. Yes, we've seen some notable progress in terms of our reserve position. We are not yet at the optimal numbers, But there has been very significant progress there. So we need to continue. And this year, it's a very good year economically. There's a rebound. We're expecting a rebound there. So that should also benefit the country through increased foreign currency inflows. In fact, we've seen for the first half of the year that inflows have actually increased. They were better than last year. But I was also surprised, even our remittances, they've also gone up more than the corresponding period last year, which means the impact of the US aid fallout so far has not been very significant in terms of our current account, So we'll see maybe for the second half of this year what's going to happen here. But so far, the impact it's been felt, but not probably as worse as we scholars said and other observers had expected.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for making sure that you deal with that point, because I'm sure I read in today's Financial Gazette they're talking about business demanding clarity on ESG fate, and so
I think it's because different people. But the best people, I think, probably to listen to are the Minister of Finance and the Central Bank, and not necessarily politicians. Of course, there are political economy considerations that may come into play, which could also even affect the roadmap itself. But I think it's very good for us to be very careful, very circumspect, as wise as serpents. But gentle as doves, as the Bible says.
Sure. Please join us in the final segment of this week's program as we bring to a close what I would like to believe that a very, very engaging discussion with Professor Chitambara, where we've been actually looking at the recent monetary policy statement and the mid-term budget statement by both the Treasury and the RBZ. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are at the tail end of this week's program. And we have been discussing the latest monetary policy statement, which was released by the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe Governor, Dr. John Mshavan, last Thursday. And also, we are now going to look at one or two things that came out of the engagement between the Minister of Finance, Professor Mtoli Ncube, business, academics, students, and of course, experts such as Dr. Chitambara, when they wanted to gain more clarity on his recent midterm budget statement. A lot of things came out of Dr. Chitambara, out of that Daily News engagement.
Very great engagement.
But the minister said very interesting things there, and I'm going to discuss further those two. He said he did not want to disturb the budget, and he wanted to stay the course. But he had listened to also contributions from people with regards to taxes. He said he will look into the issue of trying to reduce the IMTT tax.
He promised that.
But he said also that the reason why he had introduced it and maintained it thus far was because there were other people who were not paying taxes. That was the best tax to make that everyone pays. To what levels should he go?
Well, I think with the IMTT, the minister made it clear that it's not going to scrape it off completely. So I think we need to reduce that probably to 0.5%. Because what it has also done is to incentivize the cash-based economy for more sector disintermediation. So someone could also then argue that it has actually made things worse for government in terms of even total revenues, because it has moved transactions from the formal sector to the unofficial or the informal, so-called informal, non-formal economy. But yes, I think it's necessary. But I think the numbers I think have to be adjusted. Like with most other taxes, even the other issue that came up was also the issue of the fuel prices in Zimbabwe, and it's largely as a result of the taxes, the duties and the levies, the regulatory fees within the fuel value chain. Yeah. So I think in terms of what the ministry is doing now around reforming the doing business environment, I think they need to broaden it, not just the issue of regulations and licensing, which is what I heard the minister say, but I think even to the broader tax issues. So we need to look at it from a more holistic approach, not just focusing on, yes, the regulatory issues are there, but also the tax issues are also looming very, very, very large. So let's broaden the reforms to not just regulatory issues, but also taxation issues. Of course, tax is also a regulation, but we need to be more direct, because I think the issue of tax is one of the biggest.
Well, some are administrative costs,
some are, yes,
but some are actually
direct
real
taxes.
taxes.
Yeah.
So I think you're right.
Yeah. And there was even an outcry from someone who was lamenting the taxes paid by those that are formally employed, the burden. Like the contribution of pay as you earn is now, I think, around 20%, which is far more than what corporates are actually paying or contributing to total tax revenues in Zimbabwe. So the burden is being felt, and I think it needs to be lessened. Because once you lessen the burden, it also makes it, you also create more aggregate demand in the economy, and indirect taxes like VAT, which in any case is our biggest cash cow, will also benefit. So VAT is the cash cow.
Sure.
So if you leave individuals with more disposable incomes, like one of the recommendations that I made was that let's put the tax-free threshold at $150. Why $150? Because the TNF, the Tripartite Negotiating Forum, has agreed on a minimum wage of USD 150. So our tax-free threshold must also now be set at that mark at $150. And the minister seems to be buying into that idea.
Yeah, he did on that.
We're expecting probably changes in the 2026 budget to reflect that. Yeah, but already the 150 has been gazetted. Because it doesn't apply to the agricultural sector and the domestics.
See, one of the most notable things that the administration of President Emmerson Mnangagwa has done has been to reduce the wage bill from unsustainable high 83-84%.
Yeah, at one time I think almost 90%.
90%, to where it is about 55. 55%.
Yeah.
And the minister said his wish really would be to reduce probably about 50%.
Yeah.
So when we combine, a good forecasts, a rebound in agriculture, not say a lot of disruptions from the withdrawal for a larger chunk of the overseas development assistance. You look at in the foreign currency inflows and increasing them, including diaspora remittances. So are we likely to see a 2026 budget that will speak to the aspirations of both ordinary citizens and businesses?
Well, I think so. I think the minister will try to come up with a fine balance. Because my view is that the demands on financing are still very huge, especially in terms of infrastructure. Even the minister alluded to the fact that we've over-contracted. I think that's speaking to the demands in terms of what needs to be done around, say, infrastructure. And when you look at the state of our infrastructure, look at the state of our energy, we have huge deficits across all the sectors, and also coupled with the inefficiencies in terms of that. So I think they will try to come up with a fine balance, but obviously it's a very difficult act to put together. But we are hoping that, yes, I think there will be some relief, both for households, but also even for businesses.
And before I let you go, Professor Chitambara.
Yes.
We spoke about the way Treasury and Central Bank are complementing each other.
Yeah.
And working closely. how critical is it that they continue on this path
I think it's very critical.
in terms of making sure that there's stability that stems from discipline?
It's very, very critical. I'm actually very happy with the complementarity that is actually there between the monetary policy and the fiscal policy. And also the fact that the central bank has now been allowed to stick to its core business. What was happening through the creation of seigniorage, money creation, it was having a huge destabilizing effect. So what the Minister of Finance has done to assume the debts of the central bank, and also even the financing of the 25% surrender requirement, I think that is really helped in terms of stabilizing. Those means the central bank now is no longer creating money. Yeah, of course, there's a huge backlog of businesses that have not been paid. But I think in terms of discipline, instilling discipline, I think that's very important. Yeah, and so far you can really feel the impact, the positive impact, the positive vibes. Yes, it's been a bit slow, but I think if we build on that, then I think we will get somewhere.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think what's needed is for that. I'm happy with that engagement that we had, and I'm happy with the minister. Now he seems to be doing a lot of listening, different stakeholders, and I think that really helps the economy. So kudos to the minister and his team. I think they're doing a good job so far.
Sure.
This year we've seen them, I think, turn the page, and I'm very optimistic that if they continue on that path, I think we'll surely achieve long-term stability and sustainability sooner than we were anticipating or expecting.
Mm-hmm. Always a pleasure having you on this program, Dr. Chitambara.
Thank you so much for giving us relevance.
Great. So we end the program with the statement of positive vibes. So positive vibes, Q1, Q2, Q3 on the highway. Ours is not just a highway that is with an ending. It's a highway that continues to go. Until next week, same time, same presenter, same station, same program. We will see you. And surely for those who love football, tomorrow, the reigning champions, Liverpool, they are entertaining Bournemouth. And of course, the big one is there on Sunday. Manchester United versus, you know who, the Gunners. Good night.